Good afternoon, boys and girls. Today we are going to talk about function notation. So you should have picked up one of these. So if you go ahead and get that out, that's what we're going to take some notes on. Okay? So we've been talking a little bit about functions over the last few days, identifying them from a table, a mapping, a graph, a relation, and an equation. And today we're going to talk about function notation. And so we're going to start out by defining what function notation is, and then we're going to move in to actually finding some input and output values for function notation. So on the front of your foldable, it says a function can be thought of, put a little space right there, thought of as a machine, okay? So it can be thought of as a machine that assigns an output value to each input value. And you've probably heard those terms before of input and output. If you remember back on the table, the x coordinate is your input, that's what you're putting in, and then your y coordinate is what you're going to be putting out. And so this kind of is going to connect what we talked about last week to what we're moving into now, which is the equation part. All right? So we've talked about functions, and now we need to talk about some symbols and some notation. When you see this is the symbol for function. We are no longer asking you if you have a function. When you see this symbol, it's letting you know you're dealing with a function, and now we need you to do something with it. So this is function, the function symbol. It is read f of x, okay? And this is basically your output value. When you go to do something with this function, this is going to be your output value, whatever you get right here. This value that's on the inside, right here, is the input value. This is what I'm going to actually be plugging in to this function, okay? This part right here, this 3x plus 4, which is always changing, it's not always 3x plus 4. This is your rule. So I'm going to put an input value in to the function. I'm going to do some rule to it, and I'm going to get an output value, okay? So basically, you're taking this input value, everywhere you see an x, you're going to put that value there, you're going to do your rule, and you're going to get a new output value, okay? So let's see how this works. So let's say that we have, we're going to use our rule, 3x plus 4, but we want to find f of 2, because remember that's how you read that, f of x. In this case it would be f of 2, okay? So what that's telling us to do, here's our rule again was 3x plus 4. So our input value is this 2 right here. Remember, that's our input value. So we're going to put this 2 in the function. So everywhere there's an x, that's my input value, right? I'm going to put this 2 in there. Well, when I do my rule, I should get out 10. Because 3 times 2 is 6, plus 4 gives me a 10. So that means that f of 2 has an output value of 10. Okay? So let's try it again. So using the same function, the same rule, we got our 3x plus 4. And by the way, I will give you the function every time. You will have to be given that to be able to find out what the output value is. I'll have to give you the input value. So you'll be given the function and you'll be given the input value. So here's my function. My input value this time is -1. So everywhere I see an x, I'm going to put that input value, which in this case, this example happens to be -1. Well, when I do my rule and I simplify, I get an output value of 1. Because 3 times -1 is -3 plus 4 is a +1. So that means f of -1, that's how I read that, f of -1 is going to have an output value of 1. Okay? So basically we are inputting these values to this function or this rule, and then we're getting a different output value. Okay? So now if you turn on the inside of your foldable, we're going to do a few examples together. Okay? Let's erase some of this. Alright. So number one, or not number one, the first one, you'll notice says f of 3. Okay, so it's wanting the input value to be 3. You're going to put 3 into the function, and we're going to get an output value out. Now here's the question, what's the function itself? Well, if you look across the top of your paper, you've got an f of x and you've got a g of x. Since this has an f, I'm going to be using the function that has an f. So here is my f function. Everywhere there's an x, I'm going to input what? I'm going to put in that 3. And again, that 3 came from up here. I didn't just make it up. They gave me that. Now I'm going to simplify, and I'm going to get 12. So f of 3 is equal to 12. Okay? And again, I want to emphasize, the reason I knew to use this f of x, we can see it at the top, is because it has an f in it. Okay, so the next one is g of 3. So which function up here do you think I'm going to use? Well, I'm going to use the one that has the g, because that's why it has a g right there. And they can have actually any letter right there. It can be g of x, or f of x, or h of x. But you're going to match up. This will tell you which function to use, okay? So my input value for this is 3 again. It's not always the same, but I use the example twice. So in the place of x, I'm going to put what? I'm going to put that input value of 3, okay? And so this g of 3 is going to be equal to 4. So g of 3 is equal to 4, okay? Now you'll notice that I've been putting parentheses around. See how my number has it, my input value has a parentheses around it with the exponent on the outside. I tend to do that all the time just because if I have a negative, which I'm going to in the next example, and I square a negative, I better remember that that's a positive, okay? So let's do that one together. The next one asks you for, again, I'm using the same, I'm not even going to erase all this because I'm going to use the exact same thing. I'm going to be using the same function because it says f of -2. So it says f of -2. That means my input value is going to be what this time? I'm using that same f function because it has the f for the output value right here, and I'm going to use that function, that rule, to determine that it has an f. So for x, I'm going to put a -2. When I type this in my calculator, I better be getting a positive right here because when I know when I square a negative, I should be getting a +4 plus 3, I should get a 7. Okay? So f of -2 is 7. Alright? Let's do one more g. So the g, again, I'm going to be using this same one. No need for me to erase everything. Not a lot of work for this. I don't know if you've caught on to that. Not a lot of work. So the next one says g of 0. So g of 0, that's the next one on the list. Where there's an x, I'm going to put that input value of 0. And when I simplify, 0 plus 1 is 1, right? So that simplifies. Okay? So basically, you're taking that input value and you're putting it everywhere you see an x, okay? I wanted to introduce this idea to you today because tomorrow we're going to take it to the next level. We're going to put more than one value in there, and we're going to talk about input and output value in more detail. And then we're going to do some computation with both of these together. So I wanted to give you this idea today so you would have a basic idea of it. the homework is related to this also tonight. So, I hope this helps out.